Now, in the field of medicine, a first medical simulation center has just been created in Tunisia thanks to a partnership between the Honoris United Universities Network, HUU, and the Central University Group. This center, which is a first in Africa, according to its initiators, or the creators of the founders of the university or of the center, will allow students to really practice their theoretical knowledge. But on the larger discuss for us is the issue of innovation in education in Africa.
Indeed, Jerry, of course, there is still a lot of progress to be made, but we must not forget that very great educational progress has been achieved on the continent. Many countries recognize the importance of education and make it a priority, especially in their spending. This is the case for some countries, including Rwanda, South Africa, and Kenya.
Now is Carlos Lopez. Carlos Lopez is the CEO of the Honoris Universities. Carlos, first off, the interest for Morocco and Tunisia in terms of higher studies has grown. What is so attractive in the educational system of these countries?
I think the first thing you have to think about in terms of Morocco and Tunisia is that they follow the French system. And so when you look at the educational framing and you look at the rules and you look at the outcomes, they follow the French system very, very closely. And so there's an implicit recognition of a world-class structure in both of these countries. The other piece is that the universities and the countries in these countries have a very broad offering with respect to programs, both in the public and the private. And so when Morocco and Tunisia thinks about how they're going to benefit the rest of the continent, the policymakers and the institutional leaders in each one of these countries says we're able to have very safe and very good affordable housing for students that are going to have a transnational movement to the countries. And then two, these degrees will have a lot of recognition throughout the north of Africa and most of Francophone Africa because the system, the French system, underlies most of these schemes that the educational authorities follow. So it is an outcome and an educational degree that allows the students to have a lot of visibility across the continent simply because of the underlying system, but two, because each one of these countries has a very good ecosystem with respect to their education, particularly in higher education.
Well, it seems I may have gotten your name wrong there. Luis, today one of the main issues for sub-Saharan countries is the quality of their education system. Some say it is not adequate enough to meet the needs of development. How does your university, Honoris United Universities, how have you been able to respond to this challenge at your level?
I think there's a couple of points that we have to consider. The first is that we want to operate as Honoris United Universities in an ecosystem that is robust and diverse. What does that mean? It means that you have to look at what the K-12 system is doing, what the primary and secondary educational commitments of each one of these countries is, and that's where it really starts. So even though we're in higher education, you need to have a very good coverage level, a very good access level, and a good quality level of basic education. That means the languages and that means math. And so to the extent that there's investment, particularly from the public side, into these systems, the higher education system benefits from that. You have students that are ready to move on into higher programs and higher degrees. When we look at this, I think there's plenty of opportunity to improve. But in higher education, what Honoris is doing, once we see a good and steady investment into the lower education parts of the system, we focus on infrastructure, for example. So there's engineering programs that we want to offer. There's also health sciences programs that we want to offer with respect to the public health nature of the population. And so when we look at the opportunity to make a difference, we go into programs that provide pathways into careers, very traditional ones like business or law or IT. And then there's very strong focus on infrastructure or on healthcare that we really do like in terms of making a difference. So when I think about the inadequacy, what I tend to focus on for Honoris United Universities is those spaces where there could be a very immediate benefit to the society in terms of the programs and professions, but also to the student and his family or her family and the communities, because it does provide some mobility once we have that educational outcome.
Luis, what type of decisions do African countries need to take so that the education system on the continent sustains economic growth?
I think the first thing is to look at the budgetary constraints that every single one of the countries has, and to make a strong commitment, an almost an unmovable commitment to investing a hefty portion of the GDP in education. And that means some infrastructure, that means some technology, that means faculty. And the faculty piece is very important. So having qualified teachers from the beginning all the way through higher education is very, very important. It might be tempting to think about this word that I keep hearing in terms of growth about leapfrogging, but I do think that there's a very important component of education in the lower ages that creates the self-esteem and the self-confidence in the students to continue looking forward. And so when you make a commitment as a country to education and set aside the right number of your GDP for it, I think you will have a very robust system at the lower ages. Once that begins, then the country should promote, as I said at the beginning, a very robust ecosystem where you have good public and private offer, where you have some relationships between public and private, where you have universities that can be full research and some that are just teaching, where you have some centers and some institutes. And so you really need a variety of different options. And so I like the idea of setting aside some money. I like the idea of a very diverse ecosystem that allows for different educational paths.
This is how much we can take, unfortunately, but I'd like to thank you for speaking with us. Luis Lopez, CEO of the Honoris Universities, thank you very much for your insight. Luis Lopez speaking to us there from Johannesburg, South Africa. I'd like to thank you again for speaking with us. If you're just joining us, you are watching the Morning Call right here on African News. We have all of the stories that we are bringing to you on the program on our website, africanews.com. Also on our website, you can watch this program live and all of our other programs as well. Log on our website address again, africanews.com. Still to come on the program. Students from a school in Lomé, Togo, benefit from a virtual library to access educational resources in digital formats. Of what impact could this be to learning for them? We'll find out. Plus, just concluded in Egypt, the past weekend was the first national canoe and kayak competition. About 200 canoe kayakers gathered on the Nile River for the competition. And how did that go, and who were the winners? All of this plus more when we return after the break. Barbara and I will be right back. Stay with us.